15 huge waves that don't look real. Number 15. Rodrigo Cocha. Rodrigo Cocha travels the world in search of the biggest waves to surf, and in November of 2017 he found an absolute monster off the coast of Nazaré in Portugal. You can hardly see him as he surfs across the crest, and it's only because of the trail he left behind that you really know where he is. It took several months for the wave to be verified, and in April of the following year it was declared the highest wave to have ever been surfed, at a whopping 80 feet tall. When he got into the water, he couldn't have known it would be this big, and it was only his skill and survival instincts that would allow him to keep things under control. Otherwise, it would have been a very painful fall. Number 14. The Louis Majesty. In March of 2010, the Louis Majesty, a cruise ship carrying 1,350 passengers and 580 crew, was sailing on a voyage between Barcelona and Genoa across the Mediterranean when it was hit by a rogue wave. Swelled by winds of more than 60 miles per hour, it was 28 feet tall and slammed into the side of the vessel. The windows of the saloon area took the full brunt and smashed, and this led to a punishing blast of water gushing into the interior. People had nowhere to go to escape the torrent as it destroyed furniture and the internal structure of the ship. And unfortunately, 2 people were killed and 6 were severely injured. Number 13. Typhoon Meggy. In September of 2016, a large typhoon began to whirl into action off the coast of Taiwan, and when it finally made landfall, it brought with it huge crashing waves and torrential storms. It was a Category 4 storm with winds of up to 130 miles per hour, and it devastated the coastal regions where it hit first. More than 3.89 million homes were left without power, and 14,000 people had to be evacuated. But it was the size and power of the waves that were the biggest surprise. They broke as the sea got shallower on a coastal shelf and absolutely dwarfed buildings and the lighthouse that stands in the bay. Number 12. French Rogue Wave. The Abbé Flandre is one of the most powerful tugboats in the world, capable of pulling a tanker with 550,000 tons of cargo. It's designed to operate safely even in the most treacherous of conditions, but in 1998 even it met its match. It was off the coast of Ouessant on the tip of Brittany in France and found itself in the middle of a raging storm. Video shows how huge the swells were, and the boat had no choice but to sail directly into them. The crests were much larger than the tug itself, and when the waves broke over the bow, they showered spray over the boat so much that it virtually vanished beneath the water. Luckily, the crew managed to sail out of the storm, but it shows just how dangerous the seas can get. Number 11. North Sea Cruise. The North Sea is often plagued by terrible weather, but in 2017 one cruise ship encountered far worse conditions than a crew had ever seen before. As the boat sailed over the peaks and troughs, all passengers could see was either the sky or the looming ocean. But little did they know a gigantic wave was headed their way. Suddenly, it crashed into the side of the ship and engulfed the entire vessel. It was so close to being flipped over, but luckily the wave hit at the perfect angle, and it was able to sail through. From the way the camera wobbles, you can see the extreme force that was inflicted onto the ship, and it was forced to go straight into dock for significant repairs. Number 10. Jaws. Hawaii is known as one of the world's best surfing destinations, but there's one place where a particularly special wave forms, which has become known as Jaws. It's on the north shore of Maui and can often exceed 60 feet high. It's a surfer's dream and is a location of regular tournaments and competitions. But while those on boards might know how to handle the torrent of water, people driving spectator boats aren't so well equipped. In 2014, everyone was reminded of quite how powerful Jaws is when a boat that was trying to get a better view of the action found itself in the direct path of the wave. It was capsized in just a matter of seconds and threw all on board into the water. Fortunately, everyone survived, and the boat was turned back over and towed back to the nearby harbor. Number 9. Cross waves. Cross waves are a strange ocean phenomenon that occurs when 2 weather systems at perpendicular angles meet at sea. As waves are formed by the wind, they continue in their original direction until their energy dissipates, and the result is a grid-like structure on the ocean's surface. They are extremely dangerous and difficult to navigate, and almost look unreal. They can occur virtually anywhere that there's a body of water and are linked with a higher than normal number of shipping accidents when the vessels are caught in them, because it's impossible to line up against the waves. Even in shallower regions, they make it extremely difficult to swim and can produce invisible currents beneath the water that flow in different directions and make things even more tricky. Most advice is that if you ever see these forming, to get out of the way as soon as possible. Number 8. Glacier calving. On the edge of glaciers and large ice formations, blocks regularly fall from the side into the water. It's a process known as calving and can see huge pieces detaching themselves from the main shelf. The glaciers themselves are popular tourist attractions, and occasionally visitors will see a large event taking place, one that can risk the safety of anyone in the surrounding area. In 2010, a tourist boat stopped across the bay from the Holgate Glacier in Alaska, where people started noticing small lumps of ice falling from the side. Gradually, more and more began to fall until the entire cliff calves free from the glacier and plummets into the ocean. With such a large volume of material falling down, a huge wave is inevitable, and for a moment those who were on the boat started worrying for their safety. Luckily, the wave passed without any damage, but it could have been a different story if they had been any closer. Number 7. Japanese tsunami, 2011. In March of 2011, a magnitude 9 earthquake struck northeastern Japan. While this in itself was a destructive event, it triggered a series of tsunamis that struck the mainland. The monster waves surged up to 6 miles inland at heights of up to 128 feet and devastated everything that lay in their path. 217 square miles were completely flooded. 3 buildings being used as rescue centers were washed away, and the wave even created a frighteningly large whirlpool. More than 16,000 people are thought to have died because of the tsunami, and it was also responsible for triggering a cooling system failure at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that led to a level 7 nuclear meltdown. Furthermore, the wave was so powerful that it raced across the ocean around the world and even reached Alaska, Hawaii, and Chile, where the waves were 6.6 feet high when they made landfall. Number 6. A southern monster. As far as oceans go, the Southern Ocean is a particularly inhospitable place. It has very few land masses that interrupt the buildup of energy in waves, and as a result allows for the formation of absolutely gigantic ones. A network of buoys monitor the conditions of the water, and in May of 2018, one of the devices near Campbell Island recorded something unbelievable. During a storm, the waves reached a height of 78 feet, which broke the record for the largest wave ever detected in the ocean. While this isn't as high as some tsunamis can get, this was formed purely by the power of the wind blowing over the ocean's surface. It's one of the least studied regions on Earth because of how remote it is, despite accounting for more than 22% of the total ocean area of the planet. And by researching these frequent storms in more detail, it's hoped scientists will get a better understanding of weather systems around the globe. Number 5. Tidal bore. Tidal bores occur in rivers around the world when the leading edge of an incoming tide races upstream against the flow of the normal current. They typically only happen in places where there's a large tidal range of more than 20 feet and can lead to some spectacular sights. At the right time of year, some become popular sites for surfers, but others can be a lot more dangerous. One place that often sees this phenomenon is the Qiantang River in China, and it's where the world's largest tidal bore happens. During August, the conditions are just right, and the swell can reach 10 to 15 feet in height, breaking the banks and temporarily flooding regions along the shore. It's an annual event that is mentioned in texts dating back hundreds of years, and even saw the construction of a resort to watch the tide from during the Ming Dynasty. It does, however, cause safety concerns for people next to the river's edge, and often people don't realize how quickly the water levels can rise. Each year, the Chinese authorities issue warnings to anyone that plans on visiting to see the bore to make sure they keep their distance. But despite their best efforts, several people are killed after taking too big a risk for the perfect photo opportunity. Before we move on, be sure to subscribe to Top 5s with notifications on. Number 4. Dungeons. The quest for the ultimate wave takes surfers to treacherous sites across the globe. And there's one place in South Africa that is on the bucket list of every big wave enthusiast, known as Dungeons. It's at the foot of Sentinel Mountain in the country's western cape, and while the breaks aren't regular, if you do manage to catch one of the notoriously huge swells, you're in for a treat. The best time is usually during August, when the storms that occur over the Southern Ocean send powerful waves in the direction of South Africa. With nothing in the way to slow them down, they've often traveled thousands of miles before making landfall, and have been measured to reach up to 46 feet tall. Not only can the waves get high, but they're surprisingly long, and those that are able to successfully navigate them without wiping out can travel almost 1,000 feet before reaching the deep water channel. It's not just the size of the waves that surfers have to be careful of here, because the waters are home to a number of shark species, including great whites, and there have been several attacks since the waves were first ridden in 1984. Now it's more common to be towed out by a jet ski to help reduce the chances of this happening, but with the wave they might have the opportunity to take on. Most people who travel here are willing to take the risk. Number 3. Operation Hardtack. Between April and August of 1958, Operation Hardtack 1 saw the U.S. military conduct 35 nuclear detonations in the Pacific Proving Grounds, a location around the Marshall Islands. The idea of the test was to improve the designs of nuclear weapons and to understand how underwater detonations could impact the local environment and any ships or machinery that are on the water surface. The first of the open water tests was known as Wahoo and took place on May 16, 1958. The device was placed 500 feet beneath the surface, and a series of vessels and monitoring arrays were placed around the region to record what happened. Within a second of it being triggered, a spray dome was formed that reached up to 840 feet into the air. Vertical plumes of water were also forced into the air, and lateral ones raced across the ocean's surface for 20 seconds at speeds of up to 24.2 miles per hour. A base surge was also generated, and this continued across the ocean for several minutes. It reached a radius of 8,000 feet within a matter of seconds and swamped any vessels that were in its way. The bomb was calculated to have released a blast of 9 kilotons, and at the time this was the largest man-made wave to have ever been created, a record that has only ever been beaten by other similar underwater nuclear detonations with higher yields. Number 2. The Cyclops. There are very few waves in the world that surfers will think twice about attempting, but one of the most powerful and stunning is known as the Cyclops. It's off the Esperance coast in Western Australia and is in such a remote place that it takes serious planning to even get there in the first place. When swells are predicted, surfers pack up their things and embark on a road trip of hundreds of miles to get there. And the last part of the journey involves a 14-mile journey across a beach that tests even the most resilient of vehicles. Even once you're there, it's not so easy to get out to where the waves form, as the currents keep dragging you back into shore. This is why only the best surfers get to try it, because it's impossible to swim out on your own, and even a jet ski tow has its own challenges, so most get there by boat. It's described as the heaviest wave in Australia and has been the cause of countless injuries by those who haven't had the skill to ride it, or were simply unlucky. Misjudging it will land you on the jagged rocks of the reef, and being hours away from any medical center, it's not going to end well. But despite this, the wave is simply stunning and looks more like something an artist in a studio would draw as an ideal wave as opposed to being something that actually occurs in real life. It perfectly curls over, which is why it's called the one-eyed monster, and the color of the water above the coral reef means that it glistens in the sunlight. It's often referred to as the most hyped but least surfed wave in the world. And the more you see images of it, the more it becomes clear why. This does also add the benefit that visitors usually get the whole waves to themselves, but they do also have to face the dangers on their own too. Beneath the water, there are various species of urchins that lie in wait for a wipeout, and it's also a breeding ground for great white sharks that can get protective over their territory at certain times of the year. The Cyclops is undoubtedly one of the biggest, most magical and unbelievable waves you'll see anywhere on Earth, and will remain the career high point of any surfers that are brave enough to tackle it for many years to come. Number 1. Clipper Race Wave. The Clipper Round the World Yacht Race sees novice participants teaming up to crew Clipper yachts to complete a circumnavigation across a period of around 12 months. The route changes each time the event is held, but invariably involves crossing various dangerous stretches of ocean, and this video shows just how dangerous it can be. The weather's tough, but suddenly a huge wave crashes into the side of the boat and completely covers it. Crew members are washed across the deck, equipment is destroyed, and the impact even caused food to fly across the walls in the galley. It's almost unbelievable that everyone survived the wave unscathed, as they were thankfully clipped on with harnesses, and they were able to pick themselves up and continue with the race. The crew member on chef duty that day did admit, however, that food was served a little late.